How's it going, boys? CASPR-AirTaxKing back at it again with a new Broken Arrow PTE video on the channel. Today's going to be a analysis and overview of the most recent hotfix that was introduced into the PTE on June the 9th, 2026. I'll post a screenshot right here for you guys to review or to look at the changes that were introduced into the current build of the PTE. You feel free to pause the video so you can read through them, and we will discuss each and every segment of these changes and each individual change in depth starting now. So the first major change is that the burst interval between launches for all medium range and long range hams has been reduced. So that's from 4 to 5 seconds to 3 to 4 seconds for medium range launchers, and 6 to 7 seconds to 4 to 5 seconds for long range launchers. So if you haven't played the PT in the last few weeks, the hotfix that was released prior increased the range of these SAM systems. The trade-off, though, is that they have to fire their missiles in longer intervals, meaning it was a longer time between each missile fired. And this ended up kind of breaking the balance in respect to seed. Seed became kind of overpowered, especially against long-range launchers, in which a single seed unit could easily defeat multiple long-range launchers at once. This reduction now in the firing intervals is a welcome change, especially for the long-range launchers. And the intent, I think, of this change originally was to make it a bit more balanced. Maybe they wanted people to use the SPOG systems, the radar SPOGs, so it's self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, in order to protect their long-range launchers. The problem is there's only a few specs in the game that have said SPOGs in them. So just to refresh everyone, there are 3 long-range launchers in the game. They are found in the Marine, the Motorized, and the Mechanized deck. And the Motorized has the S300 PM Favorit. This is an incredible system. You can see here it's got a nice 2,500 meters range times 3. That's 7,500 meters. That's if you upgrade it. You then have in Mechanized, you have the S300 V4 Ante. This has 2,600 with the big boy missiles, 2,350 with its standard missiles, so the range is about 7,000 meters. And then you have the PAC-2, which is around that same 7,000 meters. This can be upgraded to 4 missiles, but it doesn't change the range. The firing interval on these was made to be way too long, which meant it was just too easy, frankly, to kill these things and defeat them with seed. And while, yes, there are SPOGs in the game, there's not many of them. You have, off the top of my head, just to give you an example, I guess, of some SPOGs. On the American side, you do have the linebacker, the M6. Most people upgrade to this thing. These M-SHORADs, it's just a very effective unit, very, very good unit. But a true SPOG meant for air defense to defeat incoming seed and cruise missiles, pivots. This is kind of a classic one. You also have the C-RAM here in Striker, and then probably the best SPOG in the game, really the best SHORAD in the game overall, it does everything amazingly, is the Tunguska, of course, in Mechanized. This is the fully upgraded one, the Panzer. This Tunguska is still an amazing unit in its own right. I mean, it gets smoke. I mean, this is crazy how good this unit is, but this thing is just incredible. This thing can one-tap most helicopters on the American side. It's just, gosh, it's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful, it's a really, really great unit. This unit alone is so good. It makes Mechanized worth picking simply because of this unit. The next change is that the air tab has had its flare count halved. That goes for all units. So you have any kind of jet. Just to give you an example, you have MiG-29. These used to have 50 flares, been reduced to 25. And for strategic bombers, that's 50 to 25 as well. Interesting. Oh, it's for CAS. Okay, so the CAS ones. So, okay, interestingly enough, this is not going to be considered a CAS plane. Perfect CAS plane would be SU-25. Yes, so it's 50 now. It was 100 before. And I think this is just a little bit more of a buff to anti-air defenses. And it's meant to punish planes that stay out for too long because you'll run through all your flares. And part of the way that ECM works in this game is that if you're trying to defeat a missile, the only way to get it to miss is to get it to re-roll the calculation for it to hit the plane that it's targeting. The only way you can get it to re-roll, recalculate that chance, is to hit a flare. So, for example, if you're playing with 5% ECM, it means there's a 95% chance for the missile to hit. However, if you pop flares once, that increases it to 15 because each flare has 10% ECM. And that 15% is now 85%, or sorry, 95% becomes an 85% chance of the missile hitting. And then the missile has to recalculate its odds of hitting at that 85% measure. So every time you hit that flare, hit that flare, hit that flare, it's 85%, 85%, 85% until the missile is defeated. So that's kind of a nice change for people who are not air spamming. It's also just meant, again, to kind of reduce the air spam that has been prevalent in the PTE for the past couple of weeks. The other major change is kind of, or there's two changes in this particular paragraph they mention here, and they're linked together. So the cooldown for most air tab payloads for anti-air, air-to-ground, seed, and bombs has been adjusted, and part of that, or that's tied into the resurrection and refund timer logic for planes being readjusted. So, for example, let's take the Felon, because I know the respawn time's kind of well at this point. So if you get rid of these guys, see this reload time, I believe, is slightly increased, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see if you bring it back to deck, it's very, very quick. So it's 2 to 1. So if 1 of this is the standard value for the return to deck time, 2 times 2 is the death value. And you see it's twice as long. It's twice as long to bring it back. If it dies, again, this is meant to reduce air spam, but with air superiority fighters, part of the PTE project has been to increase their relevance by giving them quicker respawn times. If you were to bring bombs on this thing, let's bring these, for example, you can see if you lose this plane, it goes all the way up to 22 minutes, but if you do get it back to deck, it's only 11 minutes, which is not bad for a cruise missile launching unit. But again, it's really just meant to punish players who are spamming planes and having those planes die or get killed. And yeah, they just don't want them coming back as quickly. You can see as well, I believe that value has changed. Or, no, this would be 455, I think. Or 45, interesting. They have adjusted, I think, some of the resupply values, or pretty much all the resupply values for all munitions that can be loaded onto a plane. Those were not mentioned here in the patch notes, but there are some snoops, if you will, in the Discord that did do some research into the files to see what those changes were. If I can find those screenshots, I will put them here for you. And it's pretty extensive. Basically, every single munition, again, that can be put on a plane has been recalculated in terms of its resupply value, which affects the return to deck time as well as the after death, return to deck time. And this change especially affects strategic bombers. As you can see, this return to deck time was probably closer to 20-something minutes. As you can see, it's all the way up to 28 now. And the big one is the nuke, 50 minutes. 50 minutes. So if you lose your plane dropping a nuke, that's it. That's your one chance. This is an indirect buff in a way to Russia, because obviously this Russian plane, you just fire a cruise missile and then you immediately evac the plane. So you're not realistically going to lose this plane compared to the American counterparts over here. So you have the Spirit, which we'll put on the nuke, and then you have the Lancer, my baby. Again, this was closer to 20-something minutes. You can see the return to deck time's not bad, but if it dies, it's just more punishing. 50 minutes, 50 minutes. This is more punishing for American players because these planes have to be directly over their targets to drop. U.S. nukes are more likely to go off. That has always been the trade-off. U.S. nukes are more likely to get deployed. However, you're more likely to lose the bomber. It's the opposite for the Russians. You're more likely to keep the bomber, but you're more likely to lose the nuke. But as you can see now with these changes, it's more likely that Russians are going to be able to get more nukes off than America, which, again, because the Russian nuke is easier to intercept, that's not necessarily the worst thing. But they do mention that timers for strategic bombers are a work in progress. So this might not stay the same as it is currently. The next major change relates to air-to-air again. Acceleration and maximum speed have been increased for the following air-to-air missiles: the R-37, the AIM-174B Gunslinger, and the AIM-260A JATM, Joint Attack Tactical Missile, or Joint Advanced Tactical Missile, if I'm not mistaken. So there are 3 specs in the game, I believe, that have access to long-range missiles. Not Baltic. SOCOM definitely nope, 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 yes, no, 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 yes. So that would be the Falcon again. R37, R37. So what's the change? You know, we'll put it like this so you guys can see the difference. So originally, or as it stands, the R77, for example, has 4,140 kilometers an hour of speed. That's always been the same. Before these long-range missiles, the R77 again is the medium-range missile for Russia. This is perfectly comparable to the AMRAAM, exactly the same. I think the damage value might be different, but in terms of speed, it's the same. The R37, the AIM-174, and the AIM-260 all had higher damage at 19, but they had lower speed at 2840, I believe the figure was, 2840. So they were slower. And it was kind of a meme because the way plane speed works in this game is you'll get, if you're going into the merge, which is what most people do, they suicide their planes, you'll get those long range missiles off, you'll fire them, and a second later you're firing the medium rangers, and the medium rangers will hit the target before the long rangers do. But now, boom, 4140 for all long range missiles. So this means that you can keep your planes at range and actually try to use the range and now the speed of this missile to not engage beyond visual range, but at least be engaged beyond, perhaps, potentially, the other plane's actual offensive range. Because maybe they're only carrying AMRAAMs or R-77s, and you'll be able to fire these guys off from longer ranges. There's a technique called kiting, which is essentially, if you've ever seen that meme of like Ash Ketchum trying to hit Jesse and James with Pokemon, but they just hold out, James like holds out his arm and Ash is swinging away and he just can't hit either of them because he's too small. That's basically what that is. You can use the R-37, the AIM-260, and the AIM-154, 174, excuse me, to keep the enemy at range, but you can fire off your missiles without them being able to retaliate. I wish these ranges were longer, personally. I wish the visual range on things like the Felon and the 22 and the F-35 or whatever it is were higher, but we'll take this for now. I do think in the future they could use the PTE as an avenue for refreshing completely or really overhauling air-to-air gameplay. But that's going to be, yeah, that's a project for another day for these devs. They've got other things to focus on, frankly. And if you guys want to see a really good in-depth analysis of the changes that should be made to air-to-air, there's a creator called N7 Shark. He posted a video on the air-to-air rehaul that he would like to see, or overview of the air-to-air refresh that he would like to see. Feel free to check that video out because it's actually quite good. The next major change affects 2 units, SSO and Rangers. So SSO has been one of the most powerful units in the PTE. They reworked the way that panicking works, so it kind of benefits any unit that has, and at least in CQC situations, it benefits anyone that has a thermobaric weapon. So with the SSO, they were given the RPO-M. They had a different thermobaric launcher, and originally they had 4 of them. Okay, they still had 8 missiles, but they had 4 of them, and the more launchers you have, means more firing frequency. They fire the missiles or the projectiles in a higher frequency, which meant the units get panicked quicker and they're easier to kill. This unit was really strong. It was overpowered, frankly. And reducing it to 2, I've done some testing. It's just better. The balance is better. This unit is still very strong. It's still best in class, but it's not going to be challenging Delta Force or Marine Raider CQC like it was before, which I think is good. This unit, it's an 8-man squad. It shouldn't be challenging a 12-man or a 14-man CQC squad, in my opinion. It's one thing if it's in a building, but in a forest, this unit should be competitive, but realistically shouldn't win that fight. My metric, my baseline for CQC fighting for Americans is like they're kind of middle of the road, kind of garbage unit, honestly, is SOF, Estonian Special Forces. These guys are kind of underpowered for what they are, in vanilla at least, and generically speaking. In the PTE for the past however long it's been, this PTE's been open like 2 months basically. SSO would absolutely wipe the floor with SDOF. It was not even close, despite the fact this being a force fighting CQC unit. And you can see like this has more damage than the RPO. Or no, well, this has more damage, but the penetration on this is better. And this is really it's meant to be a more versatile. It's dual use, if you will. This can attack, yeah, dual purpose. There you go. It can attack both infantry and vehicles. Well, this is really meant for infantry. But these guys would absolutely wipe the floor with these guys. Like these SSO would have half health, and these guys would be completely wiped off the map. SSO now, they still win the fight as they should, but it is considerably closer. SDOF actually is very competitive against this unit now, which is good, which is very good. Now SDOF actually has, or SSOF has a legitimate purpose for being in someone's deck, because before everyone was just choosing Zaliukai because these guys were just amazing, relatively speaking, even though on paper they shouldn't be as good. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. We have the Rangers. Can't forget to talk about the Rangers. So the Rangers got a change, not a complete overhaul, but they got some different loadout options, or they got changes to their loadout. So you can see here on the Rangers standoff, there's the KAC AMG. This has higher penetration and I think slightly higher damage than the M249 Para that they used to have. I believe that's still available on Airborne generic. Yeah, so higher damage, higher pen, just a better gun, which is never a bad thing. And then if you go to close quarters, you can see they've lost their law, I believe that is, and they've gained this HE launcher. And this seems like a bit of a buff. This seems like a buff totally on paper. The problem is that it's totally not, because I think who has one? Does RRC have this? No. I guess Force Recon probably has it, right? So the problem is that this is one launcher with 6 missiles, which seems nice. But the problem is when you had 6 different guys with launchers, they would ripple fire them. This, you have to wait for this one guy to reload. It's a real pain in the butt. So it's kind of a buff in a way because of the sheer damage this thing does, but it's not that much better. I think it was 35 pen to 7.5 damage before. It is a slight buff in terms of damage, but you don't shoot as frequently. So you lose that ability, unfortunately, to kill units quicker with CQC as compared to before. And we'll just bring up Marines, Force Recon. Yeah, so it's 2+ damage, which is nice, but it's only plus 10 penetration, which is definitely a bit of a bummer. All right, the next major change is going to be that custom loadout. 2 custom loadouts were added for VDV Descentniki. So let's go over here to VDV Descentniki. As you can see, the standard unit now is the PKP. This is what is in vanilla and was in the PTE beforehand. This is honestly a pretty good unit for what it is. Just being able to spam rockets with this unit is pretty nice, and it's okay against other infantry. Not great, but okay. They've added this unit, a VDV PKP, which retains the launcher and 6 missiles, or 6 projectiles, which is pretty good, but gets 2 PKP medium machine guns. So this is a really good fire support unit. Not amazing, but this is pretty good at medium ranges, as you can see, 600 meters, and still retains 2 grenade launchers, still has 3 rifles. So this thing's pretty good. Like, this is actually a pretty good unit, but most people are not using this one. They're using the VDV Sturm. This is like a baby small unit, essentially, and it is really good. You lose the machine gun, so it's not very good against other infantry and prolonged fights on its own. But if you bring multiple of these guys can really challenge anything. I've done some testing against some of the really high-end units. For example, against Marine Raiders, CQC, 2 of these guys will get wiped by Marines. 3 of these guys, though, obliterate those Marines, which is kind of not a fair fight. But again, you can bring like 6 of these things in a deck, or maybe 8, actually. So these things are pretty potent. You get the thermal barrack launcher here, which is great against infantry, 10.5 damage, which is really good. And then you get this anti-tank launcher, or anti-tank projectile, 650 pen, 9 damage. This is a 4x4, you get 8 missiles. I mean, this is just a really strong unit. Just really, really good unit. This is, I feel like VDV didn't really need a buff like this, but look, I'm someone who mains VDV with every deck I play as Russia. I'm not going to complain about something like this. This is a fun unit. Probably needs some kind of a nerf. Maybe like reduce this to the 500 or meter or 500 millimeter pen. I don't know. It's tricky, or at least a price increase, because it is really good for what it is. But it's not very good on its own against other infantry. The idea is that you'd want to pair it with other 5-man units. You would bring it in something like the VDV Typhoon, for example, which is floating around somewhere in this deck. Where is this guy? Here, Typhoon VDV. 5-man seating capacity. You have this 5-man unit, and there's other 5-man units you'd want to bring around with it, such as the Igla, I guess, for air coverage. You have the VDV Cornet, you have the VDV Metis, always take the M1. VDV Res Fedka, you don't really need to take these guys anymore. This guy's kind of totally useless now, because of the fact that this launcher is now available here. Like, yes, they get this rifle, but it's really not worth taking. But yeah, you would, for example, if you're doing anti-infantry, you would take VDV Sturm for some anti-tank, just in case, but you still have the thermobaric, and then you have 2 more thermobaric launchers in this VDV Spetsnaz squad. This is a really strong combination. If you're going anti-tank, you could take VDV Razvedka, but I would recommend, if you're doing VDV Coastal, for example, that you would take Morskaya Razvedka, which are right here. You get only 4 launchers, but it's similar pen and damage, similar range. You get this light machine gun support, underbarrel. This is a really good unit paired with this. And then if you pair all 3, Uno, Dos, and Trace of VDV Spetsnaz, you could take on a lot of units in a forest. You could do some serious damage, even tanks, even heavy tanks. You know, this will be a really nice combo. Or you could just spam out VDV Sturm on its own. Totally up to you. But yeah, this is kind of a cracked inclusion. Feels a little unbalanced, at least in blobs. But yeah, it's a fun unit. And hopefully they keep it in the game. It just needs to be balanced in some respect. Like a price increase would be reasonable. And then the last change they made is to the Desantniki here. So this is the standard unit. Nobody uses this unit. 10 men. It's on paper, it's not bad. It's just like there's better options. Like, yeah, you get 2 medium machine guns. I mean, just like looking at this, why would you take this now when you have this as an option? Like, it's 5 men, so you have way more synergy in terms of taking it with, for example, that VDV Typhoon. You could fit 3 of these guys into the Skrezret, the Skrezet. Yeah, Skrezet, sorry. Oh no, you could, sorry, that's 10. So 2 men. It's the Rakushka. The Rakushka here. This is 15, so you could fit 3 different 5-man squads in here. But these guys, they can only go in the Skrezet. But yeah, nobody likes to use them. But they did want to give some variety here. Gave them this Desantniki 90 unit designation, which I believe is ripped off from Wargame Red Dragon. They get the RPG 29 Vampire, but nothing else. So it's kind of a unit. Like, I guess it's something you could airdrop in and just try to obliterate tanks with, but you only get 5 shots. You get nothing else to support your infantry. It's kind of a weird one. It'd be one thing if this was 2 launchers with 10. That would be pretty sweet. That would be really sweet. But you already have a unit like that in the game, so I don't know if they'd want to duplicate the Vampire squad. Wherever they are. Yeah, so you have like these guys, for example. It'd be pretty sweet, to be honest, if we had double launchers. It would kind of crack out VDV a little bit, having something like that. But look, I mean, variety is not a bad thing. Someone will find a use case for this thing. It's just not going to be me. Anyway, boys, that's going to do it for all the changes to this hotfix. Personally, I'm a big fan of all of them. I think they're all pretty good changes for the most part. I've played a few games of this current build, and everything seems pretty balanced. It feels really good to play right now. The changes to the long-range AA systems especially are really nice. The changes to the missile speed on those long-range missiles is amazing. It's such a welcome refresh. It adds some variety and some actual meaning to air gameplay, some actual skill, because it means kiting, that technique we talked about before, is just viable. It's actually viable. because of this missile speed change. So those two changes alone are worth it. SSO getting nerfed, that was completely deserved. Though I don't know why anytime they change SSO, they feel the need to nerf or change CQC to SSO's benefit, Rangers in general to SSO's benefit. It is what it is. I mean, at least the long range Rangers, that is a buff. But, I mean, not by much. Yeah, VDV Desantniki, cute little unit, which is now even better. The Sturm needs some balancing, in my opinion, at least in respect to price, but I do like what they're doing with that. And the Desantniki 90, not the best. That's something that could use some changing. But hey, again, the last thing I'm going to complain about in this game is variety, because variety is at least something of a stand-in for the lack of content we're getting. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys like the video, feel free to drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, all that cheesy nonsense. Comment down below if you have any questions regarding the PTE or the game in general, or just comment if you have nothing nice to say. I don't care. I love you all. If you got this far in the video, I really love you. This is CASPR-AirTaxKing. I'm egressing out.